Hey everybody, how is it going? It is Heather Kusiba with when we're in the Seattle area and Cassie Webb over in Mississippi with Elevate Real Estate. How's it going today?
It is wonderful. I'm excited. We have purposely not really went in depth about our predictions just to see if
Mhm.
they're kind of in line with each other. So I'm super excited to hear what you have to say and chime in.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a really fun day. Predictions are always a really interesting topic to talk about because we're kind of trending treading a very fine line, right? Because we can look at historical data and the current state of our economy to kind of have an estimate on what's going to be going on with the housing market, but in the end, we don't have a crystal ball. Like we don't know if there's going to be some kind of natural disaster or war or anything like that that massively shifts the
Right.
market, right? So just like that giant asterisk as we're going through this is our best guesses based off of historical data, based off of our experiences. So it'll still be fascinating and interesting either way, and just kind of see where we think everything's going to go. So
Yeah,
this is exciting.
I am definitely excited. So where I guess I'll start right with kind of
Yeah,
a broad, yeah. So I'm gonna do
sure.
kind of like a broad overview, and we're not gonna get into the historical, except I do want to mention just one thing as it pertains to 2024, because it's kind of like hard to have a conversation about 2024 without looking at what led up to that, which is at one point in history in the 2000s we had extremely high inventory. Um, that we had, of course, a housing crisis, a recession, a lot of things changed. Our inventory never quite caught up, and that's a key piece of information as we're looking at 2024. And then, of course, we had 2020 and all the crazy, and then the interest rates went super low. And so, it's been just kind of, I think if we were looking at this year, just like isolated, it'd be a little different, but we really are in a market with very tight inventory, which makes it substantially different than sometimes when we've had a similar climate, but the inventory was higher. So basically, yeah, our inventory has been very, very low. There haven't been a lot of buyers. There haven't been a lot of sellers. Buyers have been kind of holding out. Sellers have been locked into these low interest rates, not wanting to put their house on the market, not doing that upgrading or downsizing or whatever would normally be occurring. So we've really been building since the interest rates kind of like gave us whiplash, right? And everybody was just kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing anything, right? I'm not buying, I'm not selling, I'm not anything. And two things. One, by nature, the climate I think will be conducive to people starting to move again. But that aside, people can only be patient so long. Like at some point you accept it. Interest rates may never be in the threes or fours. We don't know. And so it's like at some point you have to kind of move on. And while we are going to talk a lot today about the kind of what we're seeing across the nation. Heather, I'd love to know what you think. I think we'll be pretty on trend, with the national, climate. That being said, real estate, regardless of what the nation, what we're doing on a higher level, real estate, these are homes, these are investment properties, these are, where we live and have our friends and family, and that usually a transaction revolves around a life event, and that usually is very important. So look, while this is great information I hope that we can provide you guys today, if you're thinking, hey, maybe this is a year I'm going to buy or sell, or in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, doesn't matter. I mean, for me, I won't speak for Heather, but for me, like, I don't care. You could be like, in 3 years, I think I might want to buy or sell. Like, that is a conversation, like, let's have on an individual basis on what you
Yep.
have on in your life. Because
Mhm.
as Heather said, we do not have a crystal ball. Nobody has a crystal ball. The greatest economist in all the world doesn't have a crystal ball because he can't predict outside influences, which, there's no way to know. So that being said, um, one interesting thing, Heather, about this year as opposed to the last 3 years is it's an
Mhm.
election. And we're not going to talk politics today, except for to say there's two things that are pretty consistent on election years. One, interest rates tend to dip. I think they would be dipping this year anyway because they were, inflation's starting to come in under control. I think especially once we get past like tax refund time and things like that, like inflation should be in check, that they're already predicting they would come down anyway. And then combined with the fact that this is an election year, just historically, like I looked back a lot of years and historically the interest rates are going to dip on an election year. Obviously, whoever happens to be, in whatever administration is currently in power, they probably want people pretty, relatively comfortable. And one way to make people comfortable and stimulate the economy is to put policies in place that reduce the interest rate. So that's usually pretty typical, regardless, like I said, of who may be in office. The other thing is on election years, especially as they progress, is that we've got a lot of media and people talking and, well, this will be great, this will be terrible, and there's conflicting information. So if people are already on the fence, like they're already on the fence, they don't know if they want to buy, they don't know if they want to sell, that can be like a tipping point of like, let me just hold off to the election, because there's almost like kind of an uncertainty in the air. If you're not, watching the media. So I think it'll be an interesting kind of push-pull, because we'll have a lot of things. But overall, I think what will happen as the year progresses is people's patience is going to wear out. They're going to be ready to do whatever it is that they've been wanting to do the last couple of years, that the interest rates have been holding them back. I'm hoping one unknown too is like how drastically they're going to fall. I think if they fall, at a steady pace, we'll kind of come back into a balanced market. If they drop super quick, which I'd love to hear, your predictions on, Heather, but if they drop super quick, I think it could create kind of like a frenzied, back in 2021 when we couldn't really look at a house before you bought it, and appraisals matter, and people were waiving inspections and all that craziness. And I hope that's not the case, but at the same time, if like we woke up tomorrow and interest rates were at 4%, that is what I foresee happening. I hope that they don't put policies in place that cause that reaction. So I think overall, though, we've got a lot of pent-up demand. I think regardless, how it plays out and how steady and consistent it improves, is yet to be seen. But I think it will definitely be a great year to sell. I think it's going to become more of a seller's market as these interest rates. But for buyers, the main challenge has been the super low inventory. There's not a ton of choices out there, and that should also improve as the year progresses. That being said, I think that, the potential downfall for the buyers would be that if they wait until the interest rates drop, it could become very, very competitive and have a whole way more challenging issues than the lack of inventory we have now. So, thinking about buying, I think it's very possible interest rates go down, prices go up. You just have to choose. Is it more important for you to have a low interest rate or to owe less on the house? And so if this is something you're even thinking about, reach out to us, whatever's pertinent to your local market, because we'd love to kind of talk a little more about your specific situation. That being said, Heather, let's see what you got.
Yeah. So honestly, a lot of what you talked about does reflect a lot of stuff that kind of what I'm looking at on both a national and even more specific, like a local level for me as well. So when it comes to like interest rates, for example, like you said, election years, they always trend downwards. And what at least a lot of the economists I've been keeping my eye on, a lot of them are thinking like low sixes, high fives for interest rates this year. Again, there's so many things that can change, but that's kind of what we're we're kind of estimating. Did you give a specific number, or were you just kind of like generalizing with your numbers?
No, I didn't give a specific number. So right now they're sitting, actually, they've crept up this week. So we're just below 7% for an average of all the loan types. If you haven't gotten a loan recently or you don't remember, there's a million different loan types. Some of those are actually closer to 6 right now. Like there's actually a pretty big gap in the different loan types right now. So it's just super important. You know, that's another thing. Talk to a lender if you're thinking about buying, what loan types and what they're, you know, kind of the interest rates are trending and things like that. So that being said, I mean, I think after first quarter is over, I would be surprised. It'll be fun to watch this next year.
Yes, that's
it's nerve-wracking to give predictions. But I think that they would end up at some point after first quarter being in the low 6s, high 5s, maybe mid 5s at some point in the year. I don't think they're going to get into the 4s or anything like that. But I think that getting into the 5s, and by the way, I don't know how it is there, but we have a lot of new construction opportunities that are in the 5s right now. So that's something that definitely is going on. So, I mean, you know, right now you could potentially be in the 5s, which is another reason I'm saying, like, don't wait for we're not talking about they're going to go from 8 to 2. I mean, we're talking about enough to get things moving, right? So that's my prediction. I think they'll end up landing around the mid 5s, which I've been in real estate a long, long time. And really between 5 and 6, between even more specifically like 5.5% and 6%, I think that's just the most balanced. The market just feels balanced at that point. You don't have a feeding frenzy like you do in the 4s where it's craziness. And yet you know, it still can be affordable for people. So that's where I see them landing. So what's the data looking like for you?
Yeah, so as far as interest rates go, we're kind of guessing the high 5s, though that is, I do think that that's the conservative amount for us. I'm curious about the low or the mid 5s. I would love to see them in the mid 5s, but I obviously have no idea. So our guess that we've kind of been chatting about is high 5s. But to reflect some of the things that Cassie was saying earlier too, is what those interest rates are going to do to the housing market, right? Because when interest rates are super, super high, your value or your cost of your home is typically a lot lower. But because interest rates are so high, it scares so many buyers and they back out of the market. So we saw like our local buyers cut in like half from years prior. But the second that interest rates started lowering into the mid to high, I guess it's high 6s is when it started, all of a sudden buyers in the middle of winter, where we usually don't have a heck of a lot of buyers coming to the table, all of a sudden we were seeing multiple offers. And we've seen literally homes get like 6 or 7 multiple offers, which in a like December/January housing market, at least for us, is what the heck, that's unheard of, that's rare. Which just goes to show you the lower interest rates trend, the more buyers are going to be like, oh, I can finally afford to buy. And then, every single buyer is doing that. Every single buyer has the same mentality, and it's going to get to be a little bit stiffer of competition. I don't know, like, how are your guys' multiple offer situations? Because I know with us, a little budget interest rate obviously makes a big difference when we're looking at the value of our homes. So we see the multiple offers like that, like the second anything changes in the market, we see the shift. How is it for you guys? Do you see that kind of a shift? Are you even seeing multiple offers at all?
Yes, if it's priced pretty competitively, definitely. Actually, I was looking at one with a buyer this morning that is in multiple offers, and it's actually a bank-owned property, but regardless, priced very well. It needs a lot of work, but it's priced accordingly. I think that we're not going to be as it's not going to be as, I hate to use the word volatile because that such a negative, kind of system. But it's not going to be quite as like drastic, like up and down for us because we're in just such a different price point. If y'all have not caught our previous shows, our price point is extraordinarily different. So for Heather, definitely at your average price point, a tiny difference in interest rate could make a huge difference here, especially with our insurance rates being on the higher end. Like they don't affect our payments as much as they do on a higher price point with lower, insurance. Here's the deal, guys. At the end of the day, like let's just say I'm like, I want a 4-bedroom, 3-bath in a particular city. Okay. And I'm going to go talk to a lender, get a pre-approval letter, and I'm going to go house shopping. What that pre-approval letter is based on is what they have determined or I have determined on a monthly basis. The price is kind of irrelevant. Like usually how we operate, like our budgets, especially if it's going to be our primary residence, right, is like I can afford X number of dollars a month. The lender is going to say you can afford X number of dollars a month. So now I have my pre-approval letter, right? And I'm running around shopping for a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house in this particular city, right? And I can afford X number of dollars. When interest rates go down, that number is higher, right? I'm not trying to oversimplify it other than to say like, it's not like, it just makes sense that the people that are out there looking for the type of house I am, if interest rates go down by any substantial amount, that dollar amount looks different. That's what I'm basing my offers on more than likely.
Yeah.
So I think the advantage though for buyers right now is that personally, I'd rather pay a lower price for a house. I can worry about I can refinance later potentially or whatever. I'm more worried like because I don't like to be in tons of debt, right? So I would really like to get a lower price. So that's why I'm actually in the process of buying a house right now. And another house. We're going to talk about that later. Then for sellers though, it's a great time because the inventory is so low, like people don't have a lot to choose from. So if you wait, I mean, there's pros and cons. So I think that's the important thing. We didn't even really touch on the rental, but the rental market is, I think, finding balance as well, which that we can do a whole episode on that. So we're not going to get into that. But I think we're just, last year they predicted balance. I was like, maybe. And maybe I did at some point, but I really think this is the year where they may get a little volatile. The year could be a little uneasy, I guess you could say, as we move towards the election. But I think overall it's going to be a great year for real estate. So
yeah, I agree. I think we're definitely going to see more of the balancing acts actually this year. Completely agree. Like if we actually see those interest rates getting into that 5.5%, 6%, like you said, like that's kind of like a happy space, which just feels better. It feels more balanced. And then when you're looking at, just in general, the housing market will definitely, I think, feel a little bit more balanced. We're not going to see quite the same frenzy, like you said. Like we're not seeing crazy high inventory. We're seeing record low inventory. So that's always going to kind of shift the approach to the market. Locally, though, what I find really interesting is, so we have a lot of tech in the Seattle area. So basically, like all of the cloud providers are pretty much based out of Seattle. You got the Microsoft, the Amazons, you have Oracle Cloud over here. You have a lot of stuff. And slowly but surely, all these tech companies have been transitioning from work from home to coming back to the office. And right now we're actually seeing, last year we started seeing that shift. This year we're seeing more of that forcing to come back and more of that shift to coming back, which I think will be really fascinating in my particular area because during COVID, we saw a mass exodus, right? Like all the suburbs were blowing up and the prices of suburbs were insane and off the charts. And now I think we're going to be seeing it closer to the city again, which is like pre-COVID times. And so we're going to see the prices and the values of homes in the city go up quite a bit because there's going to be more demand for it. And as interest rates trend downwards, we're going to see more and more competition for those homes. We're going to see more and more price increases because of the lower interest rates. We're going to see more multiple offers. It's going to be an interesting time, especially locally. And like Cassie was saying with price point, like our average price point is like 1.4, 1.5 million. So, you know, 0.5% in interest rate is really big for us and like the affordability of homes.
Yeah, here we're at like 250,000, and then also sometimes, you know, $3,000-4,000 insurance bill that's being factored in. So it's not quite as substantial of a change. So we kind of tend to trend a little more conservatively with, you know, the increases in the market. That being said, it did take that little dip last year, and it like people were coming out of the woodworks. And then it kind of settled back down. I think one other thing that would be interesting kind of to add to our inventory, which again, guys, we're talking about like more buyers entering the market, more inventory coming on the market. So I mean, these are good things for buyers and sellers and the real estate industry as a whole, and the mortgage industry as well, which of course has been, you know, real rough. One thing that too is like inflation was out of control last year. Affordability of just living was at an all-time low. That is starting to stabilize, but with that, you know, a lot of people accrued debt, right? And so now you have homeowners, they already were kind of itching to do something different, right? Upsize, down, or upgrade, downside, you know, whatever, right? And now they're sitting on probably, unless they bought in the last year or two, a boatload of equity, and they have consumer debt, and it's just, I think we're getting to the point where it's like it's gonna give, you know. I would be completely shocked if it doesn't. And then buyers are like, you know, maybe at one point we're like, ooh, maybe I'm gonna wait until they get back in the 3s or 4s and are starting to kind of like, we have to worry about what's going on today, right? And today we have no expectation of them in the foreseeable future. And then, you know, what are you going to do? Rent in the meantime. And then that is, you know, even if you're paying, this is a made up number, but $1,000 a month for 12 months, like that's 12,000. Obviously, most people are paying more than that in rent, right? So, I mean, that money you could have been putting towards it. We're kind of re-entering the conversation is the benefits of homeownership outside of the monthly payment. Because right now it is true, it's possible that your homeownership mortgage bill would be higher than a rent bill, but there's definitely other factors you know, at play, especially when you're looking at your long-term financial position and building equity and things like that. So it's definitely interesting times. So I'm excited to be with you, Heather, and with all of our listeners here for the year. And we're in it together. However it plays out, we're here. We're here for it. We'll be doing our market updates monthly as well to kind of see how all this is unfolding and keeping you guys up to date. And then, you know, next year will be real fun because we can kind of look back at this and see how accurate we are. So, anything else you want to add, Heather?
Not really. I mean, I think we kind of hit the nail on the head. It sounds like we have very similar thoughts on what's going to happen this year. And like you said, I'm really excited a year from now to look back on this video and see where we were like, haha, got it, right on the money, and where we're going, nobody could have predicted that. That's interesting. And then just talk about that. Like, that's going to be super fascinating to be able to do with this being our first, like, looking forward to the next year. So
absolutely.
I'm very excited to do this with you.
Yes. Okay, guys. Well, we will see you next week. We kind of talked a little bit briefly earlier about how Heather and I have different markets, different experience. We've been in real estate different amounts of time, and so we're going to kind of dig into that next week, just kind of getting to know us a little better, and us hopefully get to know you a little better, and so that'll be super fun. So I will see you then, Heather.